prostitute. And that was our slide from last week, I believe. Yeah, the mighty warrior, the son of the prostitute. Am I in chapter 11? Yeah, I am. Okay. Just got to make sure I got the right.
Yeah, because we didn't see the next.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, this is, we talked about how he did all this and he won and he did all this. But now we're here. Now, Jephthah the Gileadite, mighty warrior, son of the prostitute, father of Jephthah, Gilead's wife bore him sons. When his wife's sons grew up, they drove Jephthah out. They said to him, you shall not have an inheritance in our father's house, for you're the son of another woman. And then Jephthah fled from his brothers. So last week, correction, chapter 10, we didn't get to Jephthah. We just tickled it. Remember, it was who's going to be the one who's going to fight for Israel? And it's Jephthah, this guy right here. So who's going to lead him? Jephthah. Why mention he's the son of a prostitute? Because that's not good, as Mary Ann said. No, that is not good. Does that somehow make him unqualified to lead Israel? It's interesting you say that, Mary Ann, and I'm not knocking you or anything else. There is no, it's more just their ideas that say, well, you can't do it. Because there is no law on the books that says he can't do it. They didn't have a law for it. I don't have it here. Yeah, there it is. It's going to be there in Deuteronomy 21. So it'll be a couple slides. But they didn't have a provision in the law on what the firstborn son or the secondborn son born of another woman, because it was all assumed like they were your concubines or you had multiple wives. There was no provision in the law for, well, what do you do if you've got the son of a prostitute here? If dad...
So it's kind of a social thing.
It's a social thing. It's just the sons of the house of Gilead are looking at it saying, you're the son of a prostitute. At least we all have, our moms are married to dad. You're the son of a prostitute. You got nothing to do with us. You're dirty. You're...
Black sheep of the family.
Yeah, well, not even black sheep. They're not even part of the family. They're just...
Stigma.
Yeah, whatever you want to say. Yeah, I know like in Game of Thrones, it was... you'd have the name Jon Snow. That's a whole Game of Thrones reference. Many of you probably don't get that. Some of you do, but a bastard son. Yeah. So, you will not have an inheritance in our father's house. So Jephthah flees from his brothers, and he goes and lives in the land of Tob. And worthless fellows collected around him and went out with him. Now, we already went over worthless fellows in chapter 9. Do you remember what that meant? It was people, the word worthless meant like morally depraved. They were not good people. These are guys that, morally depraved. They didn't have a problem pickpocketing or whatever. Kind of the ends justify the means, whatever you want to say. So what were these men up to? Up in the land of Tob. Well, we know from history, I give you a little map here. This is where they're at. They're down here. The region of Gilead is really the 2.5 tribes. There's this tribe, and then remember Manasseh split in half. So the region of Gilead are the tribes or the promised land on the east of the Jordan River. So when it says Gilead, you're looking for Gilead. It's all this. But they're down here. And so when he gets kicked out, he hightails it up to here. This is basically no man's land. And really, this wasn't, this was no man's land. And so what was happening, and this is from history, what was happening is they were basically highway robbers. So worthless men follow him and go after him. We know Jephthah is a mighty man. He ain't afraid to get in a scrap. So they're making a living, and it's not Robin Hood kind of stuff. They're not robbing the rich to feed. There's nothing good about it. they're robbing whoever comes along to feed themselves, to take care of themselves. It's not good. That's why they mention worthless fellows. Now, after a time, the Ammonites are going to be, you can see the region of Ammon. These are the bad guys over here. After a time, the Ammonites made war against Israel. When the Ammonites made war against Israel, the elders of Gilead, they go to bring Jephthah back from the land of Tob. They say to Jephthah, come be our leader so that we may fight against the Ammonites. I'm going to kind of go through this quickly, the next few slides, because it's really the ending that we got to spend time on. That's where the questions are going to be. And I think that's where the beauty of the gospel is. But after a time, how long is that? Doesn't say. Could have been 2 weeks, could have been 2 years, could have been, who knows? Doesn't matter. Why do the leaders of Gilead now rush off to no man's land to recover the guy that was banished from their presence?
Apparently the legitimate sons couldn't handle it.
Yeah. They got a guy who can fight, right? We got a guy who can fight. We know a guy. There's nobody else. Think on that, guys. In all of this, you can't find somebody to lead your army? Yeah, but I know a guy who ain't afraid to get his face punched, and he's up here, and we want him to be our leader. Plus, what else is he?
He was willing, for one thing.
Well, he's probably willing. They don't know that for sure, but think of it in terms of
Not one of the heirs.
bingo. We could say he's expendable.
That's not it.
These are all, we don't want to lose any of our guys, you know. So get this guy to be the tip of the spear, and if we lose him, If we don't, praise Yahweh. If we do lose him, what are we out? The son of a prostitute? So be it. Why would he be? Well, we already went through all that. So, but Jephthah says to the elders, did you not hate me and drive me out of my father's house? So why have you come to me now when you're in distress? I picture him kind of like just not even looking up, like sharpening his knife or whatever, just not even, oh, you're here now and want a favor. Now you're all pro-Jephthah. Where were you before? Do you notice, is he expressing genuine surprise? Or is there a little bit of schadenfreude in there, like, ah, ha, ha? All right, so, and how would you respond? Probably the same way. I know I would. I'm not proud of it, but I would. Notice where he affixes the blame for being expelled from his father's household. Everybody. Did you not hate me and drive me out? But it wasn't all the elders of Gilead, was it? It was just his brothers drove him out.
Well, yeah, but they probably had the big guys behind
Bingo. Bingo. Possible reasons, either they approved of it or I see nothing.
They didn't bother to interfere.
They're not going to bother to interfere. Hey, man, not my problem, not my circus, not my monkeys, whatever you want to say. Either way, were the elders of Gilead doing their job? No. But now they need help. So, was it technically wrong that he was expelled? We hit on this a little bit. Was it technically wrong that he was expelled? Or did he just feel wronged? By the law, Leviticus, it was not technically wrong that he was expelled because the provisions of the law only make provision for how the household shall be divided up. And I'm paraphrasing here, but if the man of the house has 2 wives and he hates his first wife and he has a firstborn by the first wife, but he loves the second wife, remember how the law works. The firstborn gets the double portion. The law says, look, even if you hate your first wife, the firstborn, it's not his fault. He still gets the double portion. That's just how it is. But the provision of the law makes for wives. It's got nothing to do with prostitutes. So you could hide behind, they could hide behind, good political thing here. Well, technically there is nothing there, Gilead. So really, or not Gilead, Jephthah. So really, those are just your feelings. You're just feeling hurt. Is hiding behind technicalities wrong and sinful? Yes. Quite often it is. Almost always it is. What about shades of gray? Are they flirting in shades of gray? Yeah, they are. Ignorance, mercy. pushing some boundaries, sure. Now, I bring in the mercy part at the very end there because did Jephthah choose his parents? Who here chose their parents? Who here chose who they're going to be born to, when they're going to be born, where they're going to be born? Nobody. It's not Jephthah's fault. So you can't fault Jephthah for his station in life. Show some mercy, man. And so the elders respond. They say, well, that's why we've turned to you now, so that you may go with us and fight against the Ammonites and be our head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. Well, that's why. Are they apologizing?
Not really.
No, not really at all. It's more of just an acknowledgement of the fact that they've done him wrong. Maybe. Not that they've done him wrong, but maybe that he feels wronged. My thing here, I think it's simply, yeah, but that was then, but we need you now. When you get down to it, guys, that's really what it is. Thank God such things don't happen nowadays with us, right? Moving on. All right. The Hebrew grammar in this, the Hebrew grammar makes clear, and I know you're not here for a Hebrew lesson, but there are 3 clauses there. The first 2 express the condition, so the state, and the third expresses the consequence. So the condition, so the 2 conditions. Yeah, we were wrong. What happened was wrong. Condition 1. Condition 2, we're here now. Here we are now. That was then, this is now. The consequence, if you come and fight with us, you'll be our leader. We're going to right the wrongs. Make sense? All right, so Jephthah says, if you bring me home again to fight against the Ammonites, and if the Lord gives them over to me, I will be your head. So you could say he assents to the terms of the deal. Well, fine, you make me leader. That's great. But is it really a total assent? No. Because he has a caveat or a condition, doesn't he? And that term and condition, or is it a term and condition? Because what does he add to it? And if the Lord gives them over to me.
He's depending on the Lord to help.
Yeah, so is it a term and condition, or is it more a statement of fact?
Kind of a statement of fact, because generally, if you don't win, you're dead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a faithful statement of fact. It's not a condition. It's, I'm going to be your leader if the Lord gives him over to me. And if he doesn't give him over to me, well, we're all going to be dead. We don't have to worry about it. So, Deo volente, that's just a fancy Latin term. I like to say that sometimes. I say that to myself a lot. God willing. Not at all like the Muslim inshallah. Not at all like that. But Deo volente, God willing. The condition with the statement, hey, if God wills it, it'll be so. If it's not, yeah. How often do we pray thy will be done and then get all upset or try to change the will, or get all upset that it's really my will not being done? Deo volente. Thy will be done. Here's a question. Can you know the Lord of the will? Can you know the will of the Lord if you don't know his word? No. So what about the humility then of being willing to do it? If you know what your Lord says, but it means you're going to have to be humbled in the process. I'm going to have to lower myself. This is how it's going to be done. How often do we not, we do the my will, because the other option is thy will, but that's going to mean me taking a bath, taking the shorts, whatever. Yeah. So there's a whole lot of, let me not just know thy will, Lord, but let me do thy will. But you can't know and do the will of the Lord if you don't know his word, which means be in the word. A lot of good Christians aren't in the word, are they?
But they don't like that crossing.
No. Or they know, well, the Bible says, and it's like, that's not what the Bible says. That's what Ben Franklin says, but... All right, so the elders say to him then, the Lord will be witness between us, if we do not do as you say. So Jephthah goes with the elders of Gilead. The people make him head and leader over them. Jephthah spoke all his words before the Lord at Mizpah. So they promise on oath. That's really what's going on. That's really, I kind of paraphrase it like that. Yahweh, well, the way that it reads in the Hebrew is Yahweh be hearing between us. You know, that's what it says. Yahweh be hearing between us, i.e., let him be the hearer and judge of the things concerning what we're negotiating. You know, according to your word, we'll do it. Let God be judge. And so Jephthah then spoke before the Lord, right? We know he goes back and people make him head and all that, and he speaks before the Lord. Well, all that means, guys, is that Jephthah spoke this in a solemn assembly, before a solemn assembly of the people. All the people are gathered around, and he says, I will be. He says the same stuff that he did before. I will be your head if the Lord wills it, if the Lord gives it over. I will be your head. I will lead you. Now, does it mean that he spoke it at the tabernacle? Because where are you going to speak before the Lord? Usually at the tabernacle or at an altar. And he wasn't in Jerusalem. He wasn't in. He wasn't where he wasn't where the tabernacle and all this is. So, guys, I put KISS. Keep it simple. He speaks before the solemn assembly that's gathered way up here, and he speaks before the Lord. Let the Lord be witness. That's all that's happening, guys. He's looking to the heavens and speaking before God.
When they say the assembly, does that mean you went back with them to
All the people.
every people would?
They assembled all the people. They basically had like a town hall meeting and said, you guys want to know what we're going to do about the Ammonite trouble? Here's the answer. And that's what happens. I will be your leader. These guys have said, you'll make me leader. I'll be your leader. I consent. I'll be your leader if the Lord gives it over. And he's making that to the Lord. He's letting them all know who's in charge of his life. Keep that in mind, who's in charge of his life. He is a very faithful man. I'm just going to say that right up front, because when we get towards the end of this chapter, it's going to look like, maybe there's some problems here. All right, so Jephthah then sends messengers as leader. He does what every good leader does. He sends an envoy. He sends messengers to the king of the Ammonites. What do you have to do against me that you're going to come out and fight against my land? Why do you want to take back? Because I don't want to go all the way back here, but the Ammonites are looking at all this property and saying, this is ours. You took it from us. We want it back. Give it back to us. And he's saying, no, that's ours. Oop, go the right way there, stupid. Now I went too far. Okay. Notice how he goes to the source. Sends it right to the king. We're not going to play around with, let me go here. He goes right to the source. I ask these questions just for you to think on. How often does that take place? If you know there's a problem, do you go to the source or do you go ask around? You're supposed to go to the source, though, aren't you? Right? We got the whole Matthew 5. If you know your brother has something against you, when you're offering your gift at the altar, which is referring to communion here, right? If you know you're going to offer your gift at the altar, which is what? The sacrifice of thanksgiving, and you know your brother has something against you, leave your gift and go to them. Be reconciled with your brother, and then bring your gift to the altar. We don't often do that, do we? And I'm using the same pronoun here, we. I'm including myself. The passing of the peace, I don't want to spend too much time here, but it is important. A lot of churches do that. You heard of that? Now is the time for the passing of the peace. When does that usually take place in a kind of a modern church service today?
Either right at the beginning or sometimes just before communion.
All right. You hit the right time, but that's very rare. Usually when the passing of the peace happens is at the very beginning of the service. And it ain't right. But, you do the announcements and you do all this, and now is the time for the passing of the peace. And I remember, my wife's laughing because she remembers too. I know. My wife's telling me you're being recorded. Now, I know. But we've been to congregations. Well, I had a professor at the seminary, one of my old favorites, Dr. Senkbeil, and he called it the Holy Howdy. his terms. And so that was in my mind. But it usually, the passing, now's the time for the passing of the peace. And it happens at the beginning of the service. So you do your announcements, and then before we get started, we have the passing of the peace. And it basically turns into, like what Dr. Senkbeil called it, a holy howdy. We go around and say good morning and, hey, glad to see you. But really, if you pay attention, who are you going to? It's friends catching up with friends. Hey, hey, how's the knee doing? And we should get together. Let's go to El Palenque after service, and we're making brunch plans and all that stuff. But are you following the true passing of the peace? Are you going to be reconciled with your brother before you bring your gift to the altar? No. There's no, aisle crossing taking place.
In our last church, it was like, who's next to you?
Sure. You click up, right? We click up and pass peace between those who we're already at peace with, where you should be passing the peace with those who you got beef with, or they've got beef with you. Let's go make some peace. Because remember, how can you come to the altar and bring your sacrifice of, thank God I'm forgiven, and then you turn around, I thank God for all this grace He's showing me, and then you turn around and go back to your seat, and you're like, giving the stink eye to, I can't believe that jerk's here. I can't believe that's what they're wearing. Well, whatever. And it's like, there's no peace. That's why when Marianne said, traditionally, the passing of the peace, and I wish we'd bring it back, churches would bring it back, the passing of the peace traditionally, historically, happened right before communion. And it was designed for that purpose. You seek out those where there's struggle, and you make peace with each other before you go to the altar together to get the peace of Christ. I mean, that's how it's supposed to be done. And it's not really done that way at all anywhere, is it? Now, the king of the Ammonites, he sends messengers back to Jephthah. He says, why am I making beef with you? Because Israel, on coming up from Egypt, took away my land, from the Arnon to the Jabbok to the Jordan. So that whole region I showed you. Therefore, restore it peaceably. Let me just tell you up front, what he's beefing about here happened 300 years ago, from his time.
He wants his reparations.
Yeah, he wants his reparations. Is he right in what he says? Technically. What used to be his property turned into Israel's property. And Japheth is going to explain here, it's not quite the way this guy's explaining it. There were a few more hands involved. This guy's just making it seem like, that was mine, give it back, squatter. And Jephthah's going to go on and say, you got your facts wrong here. You're a little loose in the facts. They're not wrong, but. All right, I won't go through all this. I'm just going to say, and you can read it, Jephthah gives the brief accounting of the true history of their entrance into the promised land. They come out of Egypt. Remember, they go around the south. They're not allowed to enter into the land of Moab or anything like that, so they got to go around. And they come around. And God is the one. It's going to say in here, Israel then sent messengers, and he's explaining to Sihon, the king of the Amorites, which is down towards the south, and to the king of Heshbon, let us pass through. But Sihon did not trust Israel to pass through his territory, so he gathered all his people and camped at Jahaz. He fought. The Lord gave Sihon and all his people into the hand of Israel. That guy picked to fight, and God gave them into the hands. So the Ammonites didn't own the land at the time. The Amorites owned the land at the time. And that's important because the Amorites had already fought the Ammonites and taken the land. The Amorites took the land from the Ammonites long before. And now the Amorites are still looking and saying, give us back, we don't want you on our property, so we're going to, and so God gives that property. Well, again, you can see in the immediate sense, God gave property that belonged to the Amorites, to the Israelites. But the Ammonites are saying, yeah, but the Amorites took the land from us, and that's technically our land, so we want it back. See how that doesn't work? All long ago. So then, the Lord, the God of Israel, dispossessed the Amorites from before his people, before Israel, and are you to take possession of them? Will you not possess what Chemosh your God gives to you to possess? All that the Lord our God has dispossessed before us, we will possess. So basically, what I showed you with that whole long thing, in a nutshell, Jephthah draws from the simple fact, indisputable conclusion, look, man, God himself gave this property. You're causing problems here. You're beefing about this. God gave us the property. It's impossible to give land for a possession if you don't first dispossess the people who are on it. Correct? To further show how unwarranted the claim of the king of the Ammonites is, Jephthah calls attention to the king's own false god. He says, look, you worship Chemosh. If Chemosh wanted you to have the property, would he not give you the property? But in all these centuries, he hasn't given you the property. In fact, you've lost the property. Dude, if Chemosh wanted you to have the property, you'd have the property. And as it stands, well, Yahweh's given us the property, so it stands to reason, therefore, this is our property. Pretty simple, isn't it? Now he calls attention to Balak, wicked king, Moabite king from centuries before. He says, look, king of the Ammonites, are you better than Balak, the son of Zippor, the king of Moab? Did he ever contend with Israel? Did he ever go to war with them? Bingo. He didn't. I'll just answer those two questions right there. Did Balak ever try to go to war with Israel? The answer is no. Was he worried about Israel? Yeah, he was. He's looking out and he's seeing, hundreds of thousands of Israelites going, and he's getting worried. So he hires Balaam to put a curse on them. But he doesn't try to go to war against them. He just, hey, Balaam, you're this great prophet and soothsayer, and I know that whatever you say happens, so put a curse on them. And that all fails. We know that. Point that he's making, though, is Balak didn't even try to go to war. The point, Balak didn't try to put forward any claim of encroachment. Not even Balak tried to say, dude, you're encroaching on my property. So if Balak's not even going to do that, where are you coming off, dude? And then, not only that, dude, it's been 300 years. And that's where I get to here. Israel lived in Heshbon and its villages, and Aror and its villages, and all the cities that are on the banks of all this property you're complaining about. They've lived there now for 300 years. Now you're raising a lot line stink. Why did you not deliver them then within that time? If anybody had a beef with lot lines, why didn't anybody do anything about it for the past 300 years? Why are you doing something about it now? Think of how many generations of kings of the Ammonites were for 300 years. So this is, you see, I cite this guy named Clericus. Sounds really old, but that was just a fancy, he's a French priest, Christian priest, from around the time of 1700, the year 1700. And he wrote this, and it still stands today. We have our law based on this, right? And you'll recognize the law if no prescriptive right is to be admitted on account of length of time. If long possession gives no title, nothing would ever be held in safety by any people. There'd be no end to wars and dissension. If a fence, say your neighbor puts up a fence on your property, but you do nothing about it for 7 years, guess what? That's now the neighbor's property, isn't it? That's how it works. We still have that law on the book. I forget exactly what the law is called, but it's been there that long now. Nobody's made beef about it. Now it's just, that's how it works. And that's what Clericus is saying is like, man, if we didn't have that 7 years time or whatever, then you could always go to war over everything. Everyone could go to war. Say, well, that was my property. I can't go back to Germany or Wales or wherever and say, that's my property. They'd say, get lost, dude. It's been centuries. And they're right. All right. The Lord, the judge, he will decide this day between the people of Israel and the people of Ammon. Jephthah basically said all that he could say. And to prove that the Israelites were the rightful possessors of the land, he closes by simply saying, let God decide. We're not going to get anywhere, so let Yahweh decide. If we're meant to have it, we'll have it. If we're not meant to have it, God will give it to you. Make sense? All right. Then the Spirit of the Lord was upon Jephthah. He passed through Gilead, Manasseh, passed on to Mizpah of Gilead, from Mizpah to Gilead. You can see he's working his way all the way through the whole region up to fight the Ammonites. He makes a vow to the Lord. Put a little pin in this, because this is where we're going to spend some time, probably for hopefully the last 15, 20 minutes. Jephthah makes a vow to the Lord before he goes into battle. If you will give the Ammonites into my hand, then whatever comes out from the doors of my house to meet me when I return in peace from the Amorites will be the Lord's. I will offer it up as a burnt offering. Put a pin in that. That's going to become very important. All of these words, whatever comes out of the doors of my house. I'm stressing things for a reason. Okay. I will offer it up as a burnt offering. So then he goes on to fight. Long story short, he wins. Subdues all the people. Is it right or wrong? Is he making a deal with God? Sounds like it, doesn't it? If you do this for me, here's what I'll do for you. Is it right or wrong to make a deal with God? It's wrong. It's wrong. And you got to think, I mean, this deal on, if you do this for me, I will make this greatest set. Whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me, I'm going to offer up as a burnt offering. Well, Jephthah would have offered sacrifices of thanksgiving anyway. Probably a bunch of them after victory. So this little icing on the cake, dude, why'd you go there? You didn't have to go there. Why do you leave the choice up to that day to God? Because he does, doesn't he? No, he doesn't say, I will offer this to you, which is already going to be bad enough. If you give me victory, I'll do this specific thing for you. But he doesn't even do that. He says, hey man, hey Lord, whatever comes out, whatever you choose is yours. Take your pick. That doesn't sound very, right? This is from one of your forefathers. Jephthah is shrinking. He's so strong a man, and he's a good man of faith, but he's shrinking from measuring what's dearest to God. And instead, he's leaving the decision to God. And basically, said in another way, he's leaving it to accident. That can go wrong real quick, can it? And oh, by the way, it does. Then Jephthah came, because remember, they just won. They just smoked. Good, I got 20 minutes to talk about this. Behold, so they come home. Behold, his daughter is the first one to come out to meet him with tambourines. You know, daddy's home. Fought the war and won. The daughter is the first one, and she was his only child. Besides that, he had neither son nor daughter. So your only princess comes out to greet you. And what does Jephthah do? As soon as he sees her, he tears his clothes. He rends his garments. You can picture a man totally distraught. Alas, my daughter, you've brought me very low. You've become the cause of great trouble to me. I've opened my mouth to the Lord, and I can't take back my vow. I just keep thinking, and this is just me, because it's me. the whole time he's making his way back, he's remembering that vow he made, and he's thinking, come on, mother-in-law, come on, mother-in-law, come on, you know. No, not my daughter, no, this is terrible. This must mean then, if the daughter is the first one that comes out, his only child, his little princess, that must mean that God chose his daughter to be a burnt sacrifice then, right? But does God ever approve of human sacrifice? No. You 8 o'clockers already heard the lesson. You 10-15ers are going to hear it here in about a half hour or so. Because the Old Testament lesson, it just worked out this way. I did not plan it, but it just worked out. The Old Testament lesson for today is Abraham being told to sacrifice Isaac. And who tells him to sacrifice Isaac? God. So he said, well, now hold on there, Pastor. God doesn't approve of human sacrifice, but God told Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. But he's testing him, isn't he? Yeah. Now we could go here and say, yeah, but wait a minute. Jesus is human and Jesus is sacrificed. But Jesus is God. And that's the only sacrifice that makes atonement for all humans, doesn't it? Yes, and God resurrected him. Long story short, guys, just think on this. Does God ever approve of human sacrifice? The answer is no. We'd put an asterisk with Jesus. That's a whole different thing. The answer is no. God never approves of human sacrifice. In fact, we're told in Scripture it is called a most abominable or most detestable thing from God's own mouth. All right. So the daughter, when she hears this, because he says, I opened my vow, I made a vow to God, I can't take it back. She knows what the vow is. You know, there's not that discussion, but she knows. She knows what it means. She says, my Father, you've opened your mouth to the Lord. Do to me according to what has gone out of your mouth. Now that the Lord has basically kept his side, right? He's avenged you on your enemies and on the Ammonites. So though, she says, let this thing be done for me. Do what you got to do, but let this first be done for me. Leave me alone for 2 months that I may go up and down on the mountains and weep for my virginity, I and my companions. And Dad says, go. So he sent her away for 2 months. She departed, she and her companions, and she wept for her virginity on the mountains. All right, now let's talk about that. What does that mean? I am reminded here, it's just a little something, that you see it's out of Luke. Those are the words of Mary. Let it be done to me according to your word. Mary doesn't put up a fight or anything. How can this be? I'm a virgin. She just, okay. You're going to be with child? Okay. You see the daughter saying kind of the similar thing, don't you? All right. She humbles herself to this. Let it be done to me according to what you've said. But the one condition, to weep for her virginity. This is the Hebrew word that's used here. This word here, this word's used in Isaiah 7, ha'alma. So you've got ha'alma, which is translated, Isaiah 7:14, the virgin will conceive and give birth to a child. And there are always some people who come along and say, yeah, but ha'alma can also mean young girl. It doesn't necessarily mean virgin, it just means a young girl. So Mary wasn't really a virgin, and that's how they try to shoot holes in it. It is true, this can mean young girl, depending on the context, but it doesn't take away the virginity sense. It can mean young girl, though. But this word here, habatola or albatola, it does mean virgin. That's it. It means virgin girl. There's no young girl, there's nothing like it. It's virgin. What we get to here then is, can you simply start substituting? You can't. But do we? Sometimes we substitute this for this and start trying to fit the paradigm. Like I say with Isaiah, we say, well, it doesn't mean virgin, it means, no. You can't trim the puzzle piece if it doesn't fit. What's the daughter weeping for here? She's weeping for her virginity. Not for her young life, because she's just a young girl and she had so much plans and all. She's weeping for her virginity. And now we got to talk, what does that mean? That's weird. We just don't talk like that nowadays. It's so verboten. All right. Ola. Ola. That's the word for whole burnt offering. You can, ola. It just means whole. That's what it means. I could go into all stuff. I might just tickle it for a little bit. Never said these words before. We're ahead of schedule, but I'll do it for a little bit here. Ola, it's translated throughout Scripture as whole burnt offering. But you don't have the words burnt offering. It just means whole offering. The word burnt isn't in there. Now, how many of you heard of the Holocaust? Ola, hola, all. But what does the word caustic mean? To burn. Like acid is caustic, right? This is where there's nothing anti-Semitic here. Your pastor's not on some anti-Semitic rant or anything crazy like that. But the Jewish belief to this day that the victims of the Holocaust were somehow these great offerings to God, whole burnt offerings to God that help usher in Messiah. It's heretical. It's wrong. They're taking this from the Old Testament God's Word and applying it to something terrible and something tragic, but they're applying it to something that has no business being applied to. They're not whole burnt offerings. Hola just means a whole offering versus you shall take, like in other Levitical offerings, you'll take this, you'll offer up the fat or the viscera, but the meat you keep here and the oil you do, it's this. There's always a whole burnt offering. I'm using that word specifically, whole burnt, because it's in the context. You will always have a whole offering being offered up on the altar of fire, day and night, right? An unblemished bull or an unblemished lamb. All day and all night, there's always something burning on the altar. But notice the context. God says the hola offering is offered up on the fire, on the altar. So God sets the context of hola. Make sense? But hola just means all. Nothing in there about burnt. So when he says, I will, in his vow, I'm taking you back to that, Lord, if you do this for me, I'm going to offer up whatever comes out of the doors of my house. Not out of the doors of my barn. That's going to be the next slide. Out of the doors of my house. So he's thinking people. Because that's where people try to get around this. Well, I mean, if he's talking whole burnt offering, he must be thinking, old trusty Zeke, the cow, is going to come out and be the first one to greet him because he missed him. And old, my dog would be the first one to run out and meet me. No. We try to start shaving the puzzle piece to fit. Well, he said burnt offering. No, he didn't. What he said is, I will offer up as a whole offering. A hola. I already went through that, typically translated, but context sets it. If it's a hola offering to be offered on the altar with fire, then it's going to obviously be burnt. But whole offerings can be made and not burnt because they're not offered up with fire. There's no mention in Jephthah's vow of burning or altar or fire, is there? Not at all. Ask yourself, when Jephthah originally made this vow, was he referring to any member of his household? He had to have been, because he wasn't referring to livestock. How many of you got a cow living in your house?
He was hoping it wouldn't be one of his family members.
Sure, but somebody in his household. Somebody, a servant, whatever. But he's referring to somebody in his household. He's not referring to livestock, because livestock live not in the house. And he makes a point of saying whatever comes out of the doors of my house. Not out of the barn or my homestead or anything like that. There's also this, besides this, a hola offering, if it's to be blood and all, where the victim is slaughtered and burnt on. You're going to say, well, he's offering, clearly, he wants to offer up a whole burnt offering. Yeah, but here's the problem. Whole burnt offerings, where you sacrifice, you kill, you let the blood, and you burn them on the altar, that can only be offered up on the lawful altar at the temple or the tabernacle, right? Before the ark. And it has to be done through the medium of the Levitical priest. The Levitical priest is the one who does it. It's not any Tom, Dick, and Harry shows up and say, I have a whole burnt offering, and you slit Bessie the cow's. You hand it over to the priest, and the priest does it. There are some extraordinary cases in which the manifestation of God, i.e., like God commanding Abraham to do it, something like that, but that's not the case here, is it? There's no mention of that anywhere. So don't go reading into things that aren't there. Plus, you got to think, guys, would any credible priest in Israel, any priest, faithful at all, would he have consented if, just say for instance, Jephthah shows up with his little princess and says, I made a vow, here you go. What would any priest do? I can't do that, dude. I can't. That's human sacrifice, and we're not, that's a sacrifice to Molech. That's not a sacrifice to Yahweh. Like I said, it's denounced in the Torah as the greatest abomination of the heathen. There is not a priest in Israel, as bad as they were, are going to be doing that. Plus, I give you some passages. I know Marianne likes to earmark these. Probably can't see them too well from where you're sitting, but these other passages show that people were offered up as offerings, service to the Lord, their whole lives given in a service offering to the Lord, and they weren't burnt. Say again?
Timothy was offered.
Timothy was offered, yes. Say again?
Samson was.
Samson, that, yeah, we're getting into Levites, or not Levites. Nazarite, not Nazarene, that's different. Nazarite. The easiest way I can explain it to you guys is like, think like a nun.
She went to be a nun.
Yeah. And this is specifically referring to the women. When I give you these examples, this is referring to the women who worked at the temple, right? I give you some examples here. There were people in Israel who dedicated their lives to the Lord at the sanctuary. They renounced the world. They served the Lord. That was their job. And these passages all talk about the women who served at the tabernacle. That was their job. They were given in service to the Lord.
But they didn't have to be Levites, did they?
No, or Nazarites or anything like that. It was a special vow. They were dedicated. And again, I think of like a nun. That's probably the easiest way I can explain it. Not that I'm condoning that. We are pro-Reformation, but you understand what I'm saying.
Married to the Lord.
Yeah. All this considered, when you take this word in the context, how it's used, as well as those others as I noted, with the women serving and being, it clearly does not involve the idea of killing or burning, but simply offering up totally and completely to God. Whoever comes out of that door, Lord, I will offer up. Basically, we're going to say our goodbyes. They're going to go work for you now. When a virgin is therefore set apart, a whole offering, a hola offering, is given to the Lord. It follows then that she's going to be a virgin the rest of her life, married to the Lord. She's not going to take on a husband. She's not going to have kids. So to mourn her virginity, it doesn't mean that she's mourning because she's going to die a virgin, which is, oh my goodness. Even look at like the movie Titanic, oh, they're going to die of her. That's not what she's mourning. I'll never know. No, that's not it. She's mourning because she has to live and remain a virgin.
What if she already had a boyfriend?
There's even greater mourning. Tell a 15-year-old girl, sorry, sweetie, but Lothario there, you're going to have to say your goodbyes. You're now married to the Lord. Yeah, that's not going to go over well, is it? They're going to mourn. They're going to grieve. They mourn and grieve when you say, hey, put on sweatpants, it's time for church. Oh, God, why do you hate me and I hate you? As the father of 2 daughters, I speak from experience. She's mourning that she now has to live as a virgin the rest of her life. And it's not mourning like, oh man, I could never have a boyfriend again. I'll never. This is a good and faithful household. She can't have a husband anymore. She's not going to have a husband. She's not going to know the joys of being a mom, of having children. And she's mourning that because she knows what this means.
Doesn't mean that they're not faithful.
Doesn't mean they're not faithful at all. But there is a grief to it. You're saying goodbye to your plans and all this. This is, God's got different plans. Yeah.
In this case, it kind of shows faithfulness, though.
Oh, great faithfulness.
Because, I made this promise, I'm going to actually keep it. And the daughter's going along with it. believe
Yeah.
it.
She's mourning it. She's not fighting it. She doesn't elope or anything. She, okay, just give me 2 months' time to go mourn. The vows fulfilled through the fact that she knew no man, because it says right there. At the end of 2 months, she returned to her father, who did with her according to his vow that she had made, or that he had made. She had never known a man, and it became a custom in Israel that the daughters of Israel went year by year to lament the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite 4 days in the year. Now again, when you read this all as one thing, well, clearly she was offered up as a whole burnt offering. They sacrificed the poor princess, and so they go and lament. They remember her 4 days. Oh, remember this good girl, and it's such a shame that she was put to death, snuffed out in her youth. That's not what that says. I'm just going to tell you right now, that's not what that says. She did never know a man. She never knew a man. For the rest of her life, she lived lifelong chastity. She kept the vow that her father had made. She was faithful. Lament, that is not that word. That is not that word. In fact, when you look at the definitions, you have like primary, secondary, tertiary, I guess quaternary. This, to translate this word here as lament, that's like 4th down on the list. It can be, but it's very rare. The book of Lamentations does not use that word. What this word, the primary definition of the word, is celebrate. It's opposite. It was the willingness of the daughter to sacrifice herself, to humble herself, to keep this. That's what the Israelites are celebrating every year for 4 days out of the year. They're celebrating her faithfulness. Whole different story now, isn't it? But it makes, I hope it makes a whole lot more sense. And I believe we did it. Already, I know, we never finished. We finished 1 minute early. Depart in peace.
Enjoy your week off.
I like that explanation because I was always understanding she was burnt.
Yeah. Well, everybody is, because they don't go beyond the English.